Welcome to Forum 360. I'm Stephanie York, your host today. Thank you for joining us for a global outlook with a local view. In the studio today is author and two-time Pulitzer finalist, I believe, yes, Regina Brett. Surviving cancer inspired Regina to write the famous 50 Life Lessons that became a viral sensation. She has written several more books since then, and we are here today to talk with Regina about her latest book, Little Detours. Thank you, Regina, for joining us today.
Stephanie, what a pleasure. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for doing the show. What a great thing for the community.
Of course, of course. So, before we jump into the new book, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and your career trajectory, you know.
My gosh. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is kind of graduation season, and so many parents feel this pressure their kid has to go to the right school. So I grew up in Ravenna, and we had 11 kids in our family, so our college plan was to go to Kent State because it was in our backyard. We could just take a bus to Kent.
Yep.
And when I went to Kent State, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was afraid of my writing because, like, sometimes you're afraid of the thing that you really love. So I was going to go into botany and biology, but then I flunked chemistry. I got a D in zoology. So sometimes you hit those walls. And I ended up then getting pregnant at 21, dropped out of school. It looked like my whole life just kind of imploded. Greatest gift of my life, my daughter. And when she was 6, I went back to college, and by the time I got my degree, I changed my major 6 times, majored in journalism. I know, it was crazy. But Kent State was amazing. It was the great thing. The professors were wonderful. They helped me get my first job at the Lorraine Journal, which is now the Morning Journal. And I was only there 6 months, and then the Beacon Journal called and wanted me to come for an interview. I went there. I blew the interview. I mean, I share this because so many parents think you have to do it right, or even all of us think. So the Goodyear was in the middle of the Goodyear takeover attempt. James Goldsmith, and they asked me in this meeting of like 5 editors with the yellow power ties, like, well, Regina, how would you write a profile of Martin Marietta? I'd never heard of Martin Marietta. I thought it was a guy.
Oh my.
So I talked about Mr. Marietta and how I'd write a profile, and they're like cringing. And they go, well, it's a defense corporation. I'm like, oh my God, I blew it. And so, you know, I did. I said a little prayer. I brought God with me. I'm kind of a spiritual person. So I just said, all right, God, if you want me to have this job, great. If not, I totally get it. So I said to them, I don't know business, obviously, but I can write and report. And they said, well, thank you for your time. I went to the elevator, and I thought, I just blew my future. And they called me back and offered me the job. So I worked at the Beacon Journal, and then later got a column in 1994, became a columnist.
Yes.
And I loved Akron. The people were great. The readers, just so joyful. And then I got married in 96, and I felt like my life was part in Cleveland, part in Akron.
Sure.
So at one point, I left the left the Beacon Journal for the Plain Dealer in 2000, became a columnist there.
Right.
And then the 50 Life Lessons it's so funny, I wrote the column, it became the 45 Life Lessons when I had 45 years of life, and I'd gotten through cancer, and I thought, wow, what did life teach me? And it kind of flowed out of me. And I brought it to work, and my editor, I'll never forget, he said to me, you know, you'd be a great writer if you didn't write stuff like this. Because it was way too touchy-feely inspiration. I said, just run it anyway. It took off like this global sensation.
People like touchy-feely.
People do. Thank you. I wish you were in the newsroom. And then when I turned 50, I added 5 more. And then somebody added Regina Brett, who's 90. And then it became even bigger because I thought I was wise and old. Now, someday I hope to get to be 90. And then
best looking 90-year-old I've ever seen.
There you go. I keep telling myself that. And people keep putting different pictures of 90-year-olds on my column.
Oh, that's great.
So then I turned that into my first book, God Never Blinks, and that was like a grand slam. And a lot of this is just the right moment, the right timing. I kind of think there's these spiritual trajectories that kind of like the universe gives you that push. So then I became an author, and I've loved it. And I never really planned to do all of this. I mean, I kind of, I hate to say, ruined my life early by getting pregnant at 21, but it was a great gift. My daughter's in her 40s. I have 3 wonderful grandkids. So, you know, I always share that because people think you have to do it right, and you have to kind of know the next step. And sometimes just a little tiny step is revealed. And then if you take that, then the next one's clear, and the next.
Absolutely.
You know?
I do. So we're going to unpack a lot of this.
Sure.
But you're still a columnist, correct?
I am. So I left the Plain Dealer as a columnist in, I think, 2017, and the Cleveland Jewish News gave me a column. And I love it. Kevin Adelstein is so sweet. He's the CEO and publisher. He took me to lunch and said, we'd love you to have a column. I said, well, you know I'm not Jewish. Regina Maria, it's kind of a Catholic giveaway. He goes, I just love the inspiration. He goes, I think it's Beshert. I'm like, oh, I think
Beshert.
that's like a pickup line by Jewish men, like meant to be.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
Beshert.
That's what my husband said when we
Yes.
got married. Meant to be. And Kevin's been great. The Jewish News has been great. And I love using just kind of the Jewish values I've been exposed to in the whole time I was married. You know, like the
Absolutely.
friends I met. It's a community that, it's a tribe I get to be part of, and I have loved
right.
that. So I write for the Jewish News, and then I joined the Substack community.
Yes.
So it's like little detours with Regina Brett on Substack, and like instantly I've got a few thousand readers, and I love it because I have no editor. Like,
isn't that great?
Regina Unplugged, you know?
That's great.
So it's been fun.
So we're going to go all the way back to probably the first half of your first sentence.
Oh, geez. Okay.
You're one of 11 children.
Yes.
Let's go back to life.
Irish Catholic, you know?
Let's go back to one of 11 children. Where do you fall in that? And
always
how
ask,
was
where
life
are you?
growing up?
You know, there was a lot of wonderful parts of having been one of this baseball team, we call it football team. I'm number 5. I call myself 5 of 11, like the Star Trek character,
Oh,
7
yeah.
of whatever. So my parents, they say they plan on having 10 kids. I'm not sure my mom agreed to that promise when they got married, but my dad was from a big family of 10. My grandparents are from Ireland, and you had a family to survive. You know,
Sure.
you kind of had each other. So we had the 11 kids. We grew up in a little Sycamore Street in Ravenna, and we didn't have a lot, but my dad always said, you don't need it. He never said we don't have money or we're poor. Like in the world standard, we probably were, but
Yeah.
we lived at the end of town where the railroad tracks were behind our house, the furniture factory 5 houses down, the ball bearing plant 5 houses up.
Oh, wow.
You know, but it was home.
Yeah,
But now I go back there and I'm like, wow, we really were in the poor end of town. And the good thing is they sent us to Catholic school, so we all wore uniforms. We didn't know
Right.
we didn't have the nice things. You know?
Sure.
And I got to tell you, the library in Ravenna, Ohio, Reed Memorial, REED, they gave us a passport to the world. I love libraries because, you know, we didn't have money for books, but you go to the library, we'd bring home stacks, and you could explore the whole world through the library. So that was our big thing. We had a lot of fun, a lot of, you know, just there's stories you can't tell and ever,
Of
but
course.
silliness of having, you know, 5 sisters, 5 brothers, and I got to tell you, I love
Wow.
them now. My parents are gone, and we have each other, and I mean, stories like, you know, my brothers were in the soapbox derby, but we would, when they were done, we'd have the derby car in the driveway. We'd put lighter fluid in the driveway, light it
Oh
like
my
as if they're
gosh.
flying down the road. Things that could probably get you hurt, you know.
Sure, but
when
then
you got
it was-
all those siblings,
What
you
you
know,
do out in the country.
put a firecracker and a marshmallow while somebody's lighting it and they don't know it. Little, you know, the
gosh.
things you do when there's 11 of you.
Yeah.
Thank God we all have our fingers and we're
Oh,
still
good, good, good.
But a lot of joy, a lot of joy.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So you talked about being an unwed mother
Yes.
at
21.
21.
21,
So tell us about that, coming from an Irish Catholic
Irish Catholic family,
that
no,
probably
they didn't
go over
expect
so
that.
well.
I was on parish council at Immaculate Conception Church at the time.
Oh, awkward.
Yeah, a little awkward. Like, okay, don't wear the sweatshirt that says Immaculate Conception. It might confuse people. I always joke. My parents were wonderful, but at the time it was such a crisis. And this was in 1977 when I got pregnant. And being an unwed mother was not something that was common in the world. Now, every actress has children by different people and nobody cares and they're
Right.
not married. But back then I felt the shame of like, I didn't wait to get married. And you know what though, my parents never put that shame on me. But when I told them, I wasn't sure how to break the news. So I called my first column. I wrote them a letter and stuck it on the refrigerator, like under
wow.
a magnet, and said, I'm pregnant. I hope you let me stay. And it was the best I could do at the time.
Sure.
I was like 21, but really like
You
16.
had to get it out
you know,
the way
I had to
you
get it out of the way. And
could do it.
They were wonderful. I lived at home until I got on my feet, and they were the best grandparents. I mean, my daughter made him a grandparent. How can you not love being a
Right.
grandparent? And I got to tell you, I've shared that story, and thank goodness I did, because so many other people are on that journey. I hear at book signings, a parent whose child just got pregnant, or they're
Sure.
going through it. And then a woman came up to me years later and said, a friend just got pregnant, 20s, what, can you help her? And so I did. I became friends with her, helped her, invited her for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving morning, she calls and says, can I bring my brother? And I said, sure. Thanksgiving Day, she walks in with James. My daughter married him 3 years later.
Oh my gosh.
So I tell people the guy might show up on your doorstep. You never know.
Beshert.
But
it was meant to be.
Beshert, totally.
It was meant
and
to be.
she and James married. I have 3 grandkids from them, and just beautiful how life like gives you something that, again, a detour
I
you
was gonna
didn't
say,
want to be on.
This is why we're going through this.
But
It's a
while
little
you're
detour.
on the detour, it becomes this great gift, and it becomes the path you're meant to be on.
Sure.
But one you wouldn't have taken. I never planned on it
wouldn't
that
have
way.
chose
Wouldn't
it
have
that
chosen
way.
it that way. I mean, I got a daughter better than I can imagine. So a lot of these choices, like it's just where God, or I call it God, the universe, whatever life gives you. But instead of resisting it, to create an openness to say, well, here it is. Let's go with it and see where it takes me.
I love it. So the books you've written include God is Always Hiring,
Yes.
Be the Miracle, God Never Blinks, and
the
Little Detours and
Spiritual
Spiritual Adventures. So it's not that there's a religious component, but there's like a faith that's woven through all of these. Does that come from your Irish Catholic upbringing, or?
I'm sure it does, because we were like, I tell people, super-sized Catholic. And I am not joking. The crucifix over our TV set was at least this big. We had a statue of Mary that was at least that big in the house. It looked like a church exploded in the Brett house. Dining room, we had the Last Supper, a picture of the Pope, a picture of John F. Kennedy.
Oh my gosh.
Rosaries under the pillow, So kind of God was everywhere. And I love the richness of the Catholic faith for the saints and the mystics. And it's sad, all the abuse that has happened to so many people that has made it difficult to be Catholic and remain Catholic. But it gave me a core sense of like, you're here to serve others. There's like a mission in life. Like as kids, we hardly had any books in the house because we didn't have really the money for them. But we had the lives of the saints. So you'd read about these saints that were martyred, and like that's your role model for who to be in life. You're like, the bar's pretty high. But it's all about, how can I be of service to others? How can I use the talents I've been given in a way that makes the world better? And that's why I feel like God is Always Hiring was about finding your mission in life. And I think it's great for new graduates, people facing graduation and being lost, because I would never have planned that path for me.
Right.
But you just keep saying yes to the turning points in those moments. And then, I blew it at that interview at the Beacon Journal, but it was great. I found out later they hired a copy editor who spelled her name wrong on a resume. I'm like,
oh wow.
But they saw past the tiny mistake. They knew that one thing doesn't define you. Yeah.
Everybody's human and makes
mistakes. We all
mistakes.
make mistakes, and I love that about the Beacon community. So I tell people, pay attention to what's happening in your life. The stuff you didn't plan could be where life is actually calling you. And I found that so true when I wrote this book. I went back and I call them lottery tickets now. My first chapter is about the lottery tickets in life that you get, but you really don't think you want. You might have a child with autism, or you might be diagnosed with bipolar, and maybe you're supposed to embrace that and share that with the people in your life, and somehow use it to help the next person along the way. I love Sherry Bevan Walsh has a son who has autism, and she is so open about it and shares about her son, and what a beautiful way to invite others to that table and say, this is a unique gift. It might not look like it to the rest of the world, but we know better.
Right.
I wrote about Rob Snow in this book, whose son was born with Down syndrome. Didn't know it, hadn't planned it. All of a sudden, they have a child with Down syndrome, and their pediatrician turned around and showed him her daughter on her computer who had Down syndrome. They had no idea when they picked that pediatrician. I'm getting goosebumps.
I have goosebumps too. I just reread that chapter last night.
And it was beautiful.
It was so cool.
And Rob is a comedian, so he combined comedian and Down syndrome, and he teaches people with Down syndrome how to be funny and how to do a comedy show, and it helps them be out in the community and talk one-on-one. And he looked at that as not as a crisis, just like my pregnancy. You should call it crisis pregnancy. Right. And it was. It is a crisis that you turn into this amazing opportunity for the world to see those people differently. And there's so much right now, the whole thing about autism. Is it a gift? Is it a curse? It's the gift of that person. It's the uniqueness of that child or that adult. And so I think that's what this book is about. When I got cancer, nobody wants cancer, but you turn it into something that becomes a way to make it easier for the next person.
Well,
and
let's talk about that. You got married, and then a year later, you were diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah,
Tell me about that journey.
Well, you make those vows for better, for worse, sickness and health. Of okay, here we
are.
At
some point,
sickness
but
and health.
the next
down
year,
the road, 20 years. So I got breast cancer at 41, and my my dad's 3 sisters died of breast cancer.
So it runs through the family.
It runs in my family. And my Aunt Francie, Aunt Veronica, and my aunt who was a nun, Sister Maureen. But at the time, we didn't know we had this gene. We just thought, wow, there's a lot of cancer in this family. When I got it, I was scared of dying because in my family, if you got cancer, you died. So I had to really like hit it head on, and I had a great oncologist, Jim Saviors, wonderful man, and a great surgeon, Leonard Brzezowski. Those guys saved my life, and a nurse, Pam Boone, who is no longer with us. But my team, you got to have the good team, and once you have your team, like, it's doable. When you first hear the word cancer, it's like the game of life. You used to play with a little car, and the plan, it flies in the air. All the pieces gone. And you know what? They land differently, and you realize this isn't what I need anymore. This is not essential. How I look in the world, when you're going to be bald, it really doesn't matter. You're fighting for your life. And so, you know, I was going to lose my hair to chemo. My chemo, I love this. It was adriamycin, cytotoxin, and 5-FU. I said every cancer drug should have FU behind it.
It doesn't.
Because
it does.
And you know what? You do everything to save your life because you're worth it. You know, it's not about saving your hair or like how you look in the world. So I went bald. I bought this wig that we thought this salon was going to style to look like me. I had really long, brown, wavy hair at the Beacon Journal. I got cancer when I was at the Beacon, and the salon ruined it. They over-permed it. By the time I got it back, my hair was starting to fall out. So I did the old, we call it tumor humor. You got to laugh. You're talking to somebody, you're like, you're making me tear my hair out, and you take out like a clump, you know. You're eating your Cheerios, and all of a sudden there's bangs in the Cheerios. So I'm like, okay. So I got the wig back, and it looked like roadkill on 480. Like, I mean, it was bad. And I didn't have it in me to fight and the salon owner. I'm like, you know what? We're just going to have to go with bald. So my husband at the time, Bruce, who has since left me, and we'll talk about that. He was wonderful at the time. My hair was falling out. We shaved my head. I looked in the mirror, and I had, 5 brothers, 5 sisters. I'm like, are there going to be scars on my head for getting waxed? I don't know. The toys, And I looked in that mirror, and I saw the same eyes, the same smile. I saw his love in his eyes. I'm like, we're going to do this. And we did, and I walked around bald, and then I used my experience later to create a wig salon for the Gathering Place.
We're going to talk about that one second. I want to remind our viewers and those who may have joined late that we are here with author Regina Brett. We are discussing her newest book, Little Detours, and the detours in her life that inspired her writings. So let's continue. Let's hear about that wig.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry if I talk fast.
No, I love it.
Part of it is when you have 10 siblings, you got to talk fast to get your words in there.
You got to eat fast.
You got to eat fast, talk fast, move fast, borrow clothes fast.
Yes.
So after I had gone through the cancer journey, and I went through 6 weeks of radiation, 4 rounds of chemo, 2 surgeries, and then later had my breast removed because we had this gene in my family, BRCA1, and it's all hard. We can do hard, but it's still hard. You got to get your team. Jim Carney, great guy at the Beacon Journal, his sister Patty had cancer, and Jim helped me learn from her experience. She created committees, a beauty committee, a humor committee.
That's amazing.
And she was CEO of her cancer team, and I got to thank Jim for introducing me to his sister. It was such a gift. So I had those people that showed up and washed my hair when I couldn't, because I couldn't lift my arm because of surgery, and you're not alone in this, So after I got through the cancer, and Eileen Saffron started the Gathering Place as a community, everything free. You have Stewart's Place,
we have Stewart's Caring Place, yes.
Yeah, and what a great asset in the community. They weren't around when I had cancer. What a gift. And I love that I can refer people to there.
Right.
So Eileen told me about a place in Indiana that needed a speaker about cancer. So I went to Indiana, gave this talk. It was in Cancer Services of Northeast Indiana. They had a free wig salon. I took a million pictures because I'm like, wow, free wigs. This is what I needed. Because
they're expensive.
They're expensive. So I came back and I gave Eileen a couple checks from my speaking engagements, because I said, let's start one. She goes, well, we're going to need some money. I'm like, how's this to start? She's like, okay. And now we have one at the Gathering Place, East Side, West Side, Metro Hospital. There's a Regina Brett wig salon. And then when I had 25 years cancer-free 2 years ago, I said, I want to do something big. Can we raise $25,000 in 25 days? Like, I don't know. It just felt like that's dare mighty things.
And could you?
And yeah. So the new CEO, Michelle Seranian, she said, I would love to have a way to take the Gathering Place into the community, because a lot of the inner city of Cleveland, to come to Beechwood is out of the comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Beechwood is very white. I'm just going to be blunt. And you have a lot of communities in downtown Cleveland, Central neighborhood, Kinsman neighborhood.
They need wigs too.
They need wigs, and a lot of African American women, especially hair is such a cultural symbol of who you are, and to lose your hair, it's even more devastating. And there are some women who won't do chemo because they don't want to lose their hair. I'm like, God, this is a lifeline. So I said, I'm getting goosebumps again. Let's raise money for the traveling wig salon. I call it the Sisterhood of the Traveling Wigs.
I love it.
So I said, let's start with $25,000. We raised it in 12 days.
Oh my gosh.
Danielle Wiggins.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Danielle Wiggins at WKYC in Cleveland. I used to work with her at WKSU. We had the Regina Brett show on the NPR
I'm going to hire
station
you to be
here.
my development director.
I know. And so I met Danielle, and she had just been diagnosed. She got on the bandwagon. The two of us together, I love Danielle. She's such a powerhouse. She probably talks faster than me. And the two of us together worked. We raised the money, and then we needed more, so we kept having meetings. And the community added another zero. It ended up
my gosh.
probably about $250,000 completely.
Oh my gosh.
The community stepped in. The van just arrived. And it's going to be amazing. And not only wigs, but to take cancer prevention, how to find that lump in your breast, to do your breast exam, screening that saved my life. And so I saw the van the other day, and I'm like, oh my God, I cried. They have wigs. And I had just found out that week there was a young girl at Beaumont High School who needed a wig for prom. Oh, I'm going to cry. So the Gathering Place got special ordered her the blonde long wig she wanted so that she can go dance and not think about cancer for a few hours. I'm like, that's what this is about. And it all happened because this guy screwed up my wig. And I'm like, I did something about it. So if somebody treats you poorly in life, the best way to get even is make it so it doesn't happen to somebody else. You know what I mean?
You have referred to yourself as flat, fearless,
and
fabulous.
You know
do
it,
you
girl.
still feel that way?
I do.
Yeah.
You know, when I had my breasts removed, it's so hard because, oh my God, this culture, like you watch the Oscars and everybody's like, breasts, and you think, you know, you go to the grocery store and every cosmopolitan, everybody's got to have giant breasts, and you're like, wow, who am I as a woman? You know, I had my ovaries removed too because I didn't want to get ovarian cancer. So you have this sense of like, I have no ovaries, I have no breasts, like, wow, what kind of woman am I? I'm a badass woman.
Yes, you are.
I'm one that wants to live. And so I changed. For a while I wore prosthetic breasts because I really didn't know, like my clothes. With breasts, I wore like a size 10 because I had breasts that needed clothes big enough. And then I went like a size 4 without breasts because I had to figure, who am I? And so for a while I wore prosthetics, and a woman at the Gathering Place helped me. She did the same thing, and she said, they're your bosom buddies, be friends with them. So I named them Thelma and Louise.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, and then once my daughter had the surgery, because I gave her the gene, unfortunately, and she said, you know, I don't want them to define me. I'm just gonna go flat. And she's very petite. And I'm like, you know what? If she's gonna do that, I want to be a role model for my 2 granddaughters that's okay to walk around this world flat.
Very good.
And there's an online community at the time, Flat and Fabulous, and I'm like, you know what? There's so many people that like, and there are a lot of people now that are doing preventive mastectomies, and I got to tell you, I no longer have the fear of getting cancer like I did. You know, if cancer is going to scare you, let it scare you into action, so you can kind of flip it off
and
later
not freeze.
And say, I'm still here, cancer.
Right. So one thing you say and you live by is create a life you love out of the life you have.
Yes.
So how do you live by that motto? And can you give me an example?
Oh, yeah. The life you have, it's like, life's going to zig and zag, and you just got to go with it because, you know, I come from a community of recovery people that we live by the serenity prayer, accept the things you can't change, courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, and I'm going to share this because I've shared this publicly. I met Bruce, my husband, 32 years ago. We were married 28 years. And in January this year, he just said, I'm out. Total shock to me. And I don't know all the ins and outs of his decision, but all of a sudden, I'm going to be 69 at the end of May, and I'm like, going to be single? Like, what? I mean, I'm still stunned by it. I feel like I've been on a roller coaster ride I didn't want to be on, and I don't love roller coasters. I'm more
another detour.
Yeah, another detour.
Right?
In fact, one of the chapters is we're in for the long haul. I'm like, hey, can you read this, Bruce? You know, I mean, I'll joke about it, but
you have to do an addendum.
Ended, yeah, a little addendum, yes, asterisk, you know. And it was just leveling. I mean, just at first I was like, well, I was trying to make peace with it and kind of like, well, like maybe that's okay. And it was kind of like you get so blindsided, you're in your own denial of how this is going to change things. And he left January 25th. And since then, there have been days where I am like just weeping at the abandonment. And it brings back childhood issues too, because, you know, we had 11 kids. My dad ruled with the belt, and he did his best to love us, but there was a lot of sense of abandonment and being alone, even when you're in a crowd. Sure. My mom was overwhelmed with 11 kids. She did her best, but there were times where you just felt alone, and it brought back all the pain of anytime you've ever been abandoned in life will come back. But I think those things come up to be healed. Sure. You know, and so right away I got a counselor, really wonderful. You know, my friends in recovery say, you have a higher power, which I call God. She goes, but you got to have hired powers. I had to have an attorney, a financial planner, a
right.
counselor. And you know what? It costs some money, but I'm worth it. Instead of blaming him like, it's costing me all this money, it's like, I'm worth it. I'm a precious person. And again, it's not a detour I would have picked, but I'm on it.
And you're creating the life you love out
Yes,
of the life
of
you
life I
have.
So you're going to love this. So while he was packing up his things to move out, I thought, you know what, Regina, you got to own this. You can't be a victim. You got to own this.
Yeah.
So as soon as he moved some things out of his dresser, I'm like, okay, my summer clothes that are in those little crates and boxes.
Right.
I get a new dresser. As soon as he put his stuff out of the closet, I'm like, that's
you
going to
know,
happen.
you have 2 closets.
All my favorite clothes are going in that closet. I mean, I just thought, I got to own this. I've always loved Ireland. I've been to Ireland 7 times. So I turned the bedroom into, I call it like Irish forest bathing, green and gold, and I have this dark furniture in there. I'm like, and I bought all new, a mattress.
Oh my gosh.
Bedding,
Love
a new
it.
rug. Because I'm like, you know
Give
what?
it a new feel.
New feel. And my friend Katie the car lady, I love her. She's in the book too about choosing joy. She said, what you're going to love best is you can starfish. You got the whole bed now.
Oh, that's true.
So I love it. Like,
and you and Mac, your dog.
yeah, my dog. So to me, you create a life you love out of it. It is sad, and every night it feels weird to not have somebody to share your life with and be your witness. And like, it's okay that he left. And there's a great book, Let Them, by Mel Robbins, and she's like, if they want to leave, let them. Hold the door open. And somebody said, and hold it, keep holding it so the next person can come in to love you better.
I love it. I
I
think people should get this book and read it because you're going to get all these tidbits and more. Thank you, Regina,
Thank you,
for the great
Stephanie.
discussion today. Your personal stories obviously influenced your many books, and your resilience in the face of life's detours is admirable and inspiring. We are happy to know you've created and are constantly creating a life you love out of the life you have. And I know others will do the same. I certainly love getting to know you more today, and I know our viewers did too. I'm Stephanie York. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360 for a global outlook with a local view.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.